Hi, everyone, and welcome to Webinar Wednesday. We're excited about today's presentation featuring experts Sandra Rasmussen, Senior Vice President of Global Marketing and America Sales of Sonitor, and Pamela Wagner, Clinical Specialist of GOJO Industries. In honor of Infection Prevention Week, Sandra and Pamela will explore the role RTLS-enabled hand hygiene can play in helping healthcare facilities get a real-time understanding of hand hygiene compliance. Webinar Wednesday would like to thank our sponsor, Sonitor. Sonitor is the leading developer and provider of unique ultrasound technology that locates people and items in real time with their most reliable, high-definition accuracy within complex indoor environments. Its mission is to deliver the most accurate and reliable indoor positioning technology to improve the quality of life. For more information, please visit sonitor.com. A few announcements before we get started. MD Expo strives to provide healthcare technology management professionals with a unique, intimate, and rewarding conference second to none. Please join us in Las Vegas on November 1st and 2nd for the 2021 MD Expo. Please visit mdexposhow.com for details, registration, and our steps to a safe and clean meeting environment. While you're there, please make sure to sign up for our newsletter so you'll always have the most up-to-date information. Let's give one lucky attendee the opportunity to win one of our newly designed Webinar Wednesday shirts by answering the following question. In which country was Sonitor founded? You can find the answer by visiting our sponsor's website. Please use the questions feature on the GoToWebinar dashboard to submit your answer. As always, today's webinar is eligible for one continuing education credit from the ACI. You can obtain your CE certificate by completing today's post-webinar survey. It will be emailed to you 1 hour after the end of today's webinar. We'll wrap up today with a live Q&A. You can submit your questions at any time using the questions feature on the GoToWebinar dashboard. We'll get through as many attendee questions as time allows. As I mentioned earlier, our speakers today are Sandra Rasmussen and Pamela Wagner. Sandra, you may begin whenever you are ready.
Great, thank you, Jennifer, and thanks all for joining us. This is Sandra, and Sonitor really is pleased to be sponsoring this event. As Jennifer mentioned, as the leading provider of RTLS, we've really seen the value that RTLS enablement and automation can bring into healthcare facilities and in support of their staff and patients. Clearly, with the continued progression of COVID and with the flu season upon us, healthcare providers really need to be even more diligent in their pursuit of infection prevention. As many of you may know, this week is Infection Prevention Week, and we're excited to be here with our partner GOJO to talk about a very relevant and important topic in today's healthcare environment: hand hygiene monitoring and compliance. So with that as a little bit of a backdrop, I'd like to introduce Pamela Wagner. She's the clinical specialist at GOJO. So Pam, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you very much, Sandra, and thank you to Sonitor for inviting us to participate with you in this webinar. I'd also like to thank each attendee for taking time out of your busy schedule to attend, as well as thank you for your ongoing support. You truly are heroes as you're out there on the front line. Next. We'll review the objectives for today, and let's see here. We're just going to go ahead and talk about what the evidence says. Sandra, we're there. Okay, just in light of the objectives, really what I want you to be able to do is at the end of this, understand where we are today with automated hand hygiene monitoring and where we can go, and understand the importance of it as we work with our patients. Next, The agenda has 4 main topics. We'll do a brief introduction to quality in relevance to hand hygiene guidance, the evolution of hand hygiene monitoring, as well as what the publications and published literature tells us, and then of course talk about the value of RTLS-enabled hand hygiene automation. Let's talk about a brief introduction to quality. It is really challenging to look at studies because many of the studies that have been done related to hand hygiene monitoring used direct observation to obtain their baseline, and then they showed their improvement after they implemented an automated hand hygiene monitoring system. It was like comparing apples to oranges. Another challenge is that the differences in the technology that existed when the studies were done and still do exist. All that being said, it is prudent to summarize key learnings from the body of knowledge on the topic of automated hand hygiene monitoring, and that's what we're going to talk about today. All right, Sandra? Quality improvement is really about systematic and continuous actions that lead to measurable improvement in healthcare. And the roots of quality improvement can be traced clear back to the work of Ignaz Semmelweis, and who was the champion of hand washing, as well as Florence Nightingale, who truly used data to help drive improvement. Data is used to make judgments, answer questions, and to monitor and support improvement in healthcare. You cannot demonstrably improve what you cannot measure. And to measure, you need good data, data that are fair, accurate, and robust. Good data allow you not only to assess the quality of care, but also to measure the effect of quality improvement intervention. Now more than ever, we recognize that a reliable evidence base with valid and replicable data collection methods and a pragmatic approach to the pursuit of healthcare quality that captures the inputs of all stakeholders involved is imperative. What better starting place than hand hygiene? Every single person in a healthcare facility contributes to patient safety through hand hygiene. We believe as a community that hand hygiene is the bedrock of infection prevention, and yet the majority of hand hygiene that occurs in healthcare facilities goes unmonitored. Next. We have all heard the term high reliability organizations, and many of us are working in facilities that are actively working towards becoming an HRO. An HRO is an organization that experiences fewer than anticipated accidents or events of harm, despite operating in high complex, high risk environments. Becoming an HRO is one organizational approach to achieving safety, quality, and efficiency goals. At the core of HROs is a culture of collective mindfulness in which all workers look for and report small problems or unsafe conditions before they pose a substantial risk to the organization and when they are easy to fix. Think about our current method for evaluating hand hygiene, direct observation. How are we identifying unsafe conditions in real time with direct observation? As Michael Edmond once said, and I'm going to paraphrase, infection prevention is plagued by causal opacity. We rarely, if ever, are able to connect cause to outcome in healthcare-associated infections. Transmission is silent. Causal opacity makes it harder to hold people and systems accountable with regards to infection prevention. So if it's hard to hold people accountable for the outcome, why not hold them accountable for the process? In this case, hand hygiene. The next slide shows us the 2002 guidelines that were established by the CDC. It made major recommendations that are still relevant today. The first being that alcohol-based hand rub should be the preferred method to perform hand hygiene. It went on to specify when to do hand washing versus hand sanitizing, and it specified other important major recommendations. Next. In 2016, the CDC further outlined education campaign with true objectives, and it specified what we could do for patients, how we can involve visitors, and how we can even include hospital staff. Next, the 2009 World Healthcare Guidelines, World Health Organization guidelines on hand hygiene were developed. And these were developed by more than 100 international experts who specified what we could do to make improvements. And they also named May 5th as Hand Hygiene Day. Next. The multimodal strategies for success is still a great tool that can be used today. It specifies what should be included in a robust hand hygiene program. It also gives you a worksheet where you can go in and evaluate your current hand hygiene program. And I know organizations that do this a couple of times a couple of times a year, as it will help specify their priorities and look at their opportunities for improvement. Our next slide then outlines direct observation, which is still considered the gold standard for monitoring hand hygiene compliance. I'm not going to take time to explain what direct observation is to this audience. And we do know that it does come with benefits as well as challenges or limitations. These have been well documented because we've been using direct observation for decades. There are benefits to direct observation that will not be replaced by current alternatives, but direct observation does have challenges as well. One advantage of direct observation is the ability to measure quality and technique of hand hygiene. You can also look at the appropriateness of gloving, of when someone's doing soaping versus sanitizing, and it is something that you can use to educate staff, do real-time coaching and real-time education. Another benefit is that someone who is trained in doing direct observation can also identify causes of non-compliance. One of the biggest issues with direct observation, however, is sample size. Yin et al. Estimated that in a hospital with a 70% compliance rate, it would require at least 153 observations per nursing unit per time period, meaning month or quarter, to identify a 10% change in compliance with 80% power and a 5% significance level. Getting adequate observations, especially on nights and weekends, remains a challenge. We all know there are apps that can be downloaded to assist, but these are a tool still facing some of the same challenges that direct observation faces. Next. Automated hand hygiene shows the sheer magnitude, and I know I can be pretty dramatic, and that's a dramatic way of saying it, the sheer magnitude of the number of opportunities that exist in patient care areas. In fact, this particular slide talks about 10 North American hospitals and it was 58 inpatient units. The average number of opportunities per unit per day was 3,528. That is a tremendous number of opportunities, entrances and exits in and out of a patient's room. What I want you to look at, though, is that the overall median compliance rate was 35.2. Again, it shows us we have an opportunity for improvement. It is unprecedented for patient safety activity that occurs as frequently as hand hygiene to not be accurately monitored and reported. Hospitals relying on direct observation alone are likely insufficiently allocating and deploying resources for improvement efforts. Next. So when we talk about automated hand hygiene monitoring systems, there are benefits. There are also some considerations, some limitations. The benefits include that it works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it can collect, and here's a range, 5,000 to greater than 1,500 hand hygiene opportunities per month. Further, the integrated data analysis tools that are part of these systems can summarize large amounts of data quickly and provide rapid, sometimes real-time feedback of compliance rates by shift, by unit, and even by individual healthcare worker. Perhaps one of the important aspects of installing a system is validation for accuracy. And I'll be talking more about this later, because if those being measured by the systems doubt its accuracy, then stakeholders will disregard the results. It is also critical to address healthcare workers' concerns about Big Brother and how the data can be used. And we'll also discuss this later. One of the important questions hospitals and systems need to answer is, what are you going to do with the data? Next. There are multiple types of automated hand hygiene monitoring systems. There are group systems or community-based systems that count for all product dispenses, meaning soap and sanitizer. This number serves as a numerator, and it also measures or counts the entrances and exits, which becomes the denominator, and derives a hand hygiene performance rate. There's badge-based systems, which are person-specific, and they can use real-time location system. There's also a patient zone system. The patient zone creates an area around the patient to indicate if the healthcare worker washes or sanitizes their hands before and after patient contact. Next. Okay, we are going to go to the next slide, though, if you don't mind, which shows the 5 moments that are named by the World Health Organization. And there is no single system on the market today that effectively monitors all 5 moments. And of course, we all recognize the picture of the 5 moments as defined by the World Health Organization. Most systems monitor ins and outs. Ins and outs are proxies for moments 1, 4, and 5 for the majority of systems. And Boyce, in one of his publications, examined 28 studies and concluded that the rate for all 5 moments was only 3.7% higher when compared to only moments 1, 4, and 5. Next. So the combined data suggests that monitoring moments 1, 4, and 5 or monitoring the ins and outs yields a reasonable estimate of overall compliance with the WHO 5 moments and can serve as a surrogate for that. And again, no monitoring system today monitors all 5 moments. Next. We're going to talk about the evolution of hand hygiene monitoring systems. We already said that direct observation has been in existence for years. Sandra, if you don't mind advancing. The direct observation has been around since really Semmelweis started it, and it is still used today. The innovation has been in the tool that is used, meaning you can get some apps, or some facilities have created their own electronic data collection tools, but they're still collecting limited numbers of observations. So automated hand hygiene monitoring has been on the market for about 20 years, and the technology is evolving. The market has continuously gone from, or has undergone continuous changes. Let's go to the next slide, Sandra. This slide summarizes some of the changes in hand hygiene monitoring. We are only looking at the past decade, not the past 20 years. Of interest on the first portion of the slide, 2010 to 2015, you can see there were a lot of niche organizations that developed their own systems. In the early years of automated hand hygiene, it could be compared to the Wild West. There were a lot of players entering the market, and their solutions were oftentimes costly and complex. In fact, there was actually a professional car wash products and equipment company that brought a hand hygiene monitoring company to market, and that's really not a joke. The solutions were complex networks that were densely deployed from a technology perspective, and the technology was difficult to manage. Some had wires from dispensers connecting to other devices, which, as you can imagine, was difficult for the hospitals. The focus was on the technology and was not on the value and benefit. The cost used to be several $1,000s per room due to hardwiring and networking, which was not realistic. It truly was a race to the walls with the technology, and it was disruptive to the market. Unfortunately, people were confused. The technology was unvetted and unproven, and this is reflected in some of the published studies. Fast forward to the time period from 2015 to today, consolidation is represented in the purple circle. There is more stability. There are fewer niche players because they've either been acquired or have closed up shop. And there are fewer, more mature companies on the market. Many of these companies are providing full service solutions and bundles and multiple different types of automated hand hygiene monitoring solutions, which is important to hospitals. The value and benefit of putting in a system now is that you're getting more capability than you were 10 years ago when the tech was cumbersome. There are fewer hard wires today. The technology is more affordable, more accessible, and less complex. The reporting systems are better and integrate into mature networks or ecosystems. Systems can be deployed in weeks, not months. The technology is more stable. So the major shift has been from lots of players with different technology and not a lot of value to fewer players with more value and benefit. Keep in mind, however, the technology is the easy part. It is the behavior change is what remains complex. The focus now is turning data into action. Next. So what does the published literature tell us about automated hand hygiene monitoring? Remember, we talked about it early on, that it's hard to look at some of the older studies because they were making comparison with direct observation findings and newly installed automated hand hygiene monitoring systems. It is challenging to compare studies also because of the differences in the technology itself. All that being said, it is still prudent to examine some of the key learnings that we have around the technology. The study that Sandra has up on the screen right now is one that was done to determine who goes in and out of the patient's room. This was a large observational study of almost 15,000 patient room entries and exits in 16 hospitals and a variety of types of units, including ICUs, non-ICUs, and pediatrics. The trained observers attributed the entries and exits to either the healthcare worker or the non-healthcare worker. They found that the healthcare worker could be attributed, entrances and exits could be attributed, 83.6% were attributed to the healthcare worker. So in other words, the healthcare worker owns hand hygiene. Having this information can help build trust, especially when using a group monitoring system that is not recording person-specific hand hygiene. Next. Healthcare worker acceptance and trust is crucial. This is another important lesson that we can glean from published studies. You must gain healthcare worker buy-in and trust. The system cannot fulfill its purpose unless those it is designed to serve and monitor accept it. Ellington found that leaders were more comfortable with the technology than the frontline healthcare worker, which really shouldn't surprise us. They also found that participants wanted to be involved in the process well in advance of being monitored. They wanted to understand how the system worked and how it was used at other facilities. They also wanted to understand how the data would be used in their organization. Next. This study was conducted in 2011, so it is relatively old. And the system studied here is no longer being marketed by the manufacturer. It was in the alpha testing phase of its development during this publication. But an important lesson learned was the lack of acceptance by the nursing staff may have been done in part by the system's inability to accurately record room entrances and exits. What was happening was it was unreliably reporting entrances and exits while people were standing outside the doorways. So in other words, when looking at this study, you can drill it down to accuracy matters. Healthcare personnel were frustrated with system accuracy, and that alone led to decreases in hand hygiene compliance. The perceived false negatives, where no credit, no deserved credit was recognized, was also crucial. Next. There were 4 elements identified by Meng and colleagues in this study. And I'm just going to try and summarize a couple of the points. Number 1, confidentiality. They, meaning the healthcare workers, want to make sure that the patients are confidential as well as the recorded data are confidential. And this needs to be guaranteed to them and needs to be done in accordance to the policies within the hospital. Again, device accuracy was crucial. One factor that influenced acceptance or acceptability was perceived positive external perception of patients. This is also important when you're looking at, will patients like this technology, and they want to know how people are doing or how the staff is doing in reference to them. Finally, accuracy of the system was also a key learning on this. Okay, let's go to the next, which talks about validation. And Limper et al. Found that less than 20% of the published articles at the time of their review included information on system accuracy. And they defined a three-part system that validates the accuracy of the system. The first was calibration. The calibration is done by the vendor at the time of installation. And what it does is the vendor installs the system and ensures that it is correctly functioning as designed and collecting the data as it purports it to do. This involves ensuring that all hardware components are working properly after installation. It is imperative that hospitals understand and can ensure that they understand the manufacturer's protocol. Then there are two parts to the validation process. The first is planned path. With planned path validation, this is a designed route that is created for systematic validation of automated hand hygiene through purposeful activation of each and every device, every soap dispenser, every sanitizer dispenser in each room. An investigator follows a planned path, activating each device while documenting the devices from the path. Detailed notes are collected at the time that this is done, and then data are downloaded from the automated hand hygiene monitoring system in raw format. And the document that the observer or the investigator prepared is compared to the raw data in the system. If there are discrepancies in that, then the vendor needs to go back and ensure that the positioning of the devices is correct, and then the reassessment of the planned path is completed. There's also what's called a behavioral path validation, and this is where representative sample of healthcare workers in their natural movement of care delivery are directly observed by hospital-trained observers, and activation of installed monitoring devices is recorded. Again, this is compared with what is seen in the raw data. Deficiencies are corrected and behavioral path reperformed to achieve agreed upon accuracy standards. Next. LEAPFROG survey has made some recommendations. Of course, you all remember who LEAPFROG is. It is a quality organization, or it's an organization that, patient organization that has quality standards. The LEAPFROG came out in support of hospitals adopting automated hand hygiene monitoring as a better way to determine actual hand hygiene compliance. Hospitals are scored on their performance on 5 domains of hand hygiene. These include monitoring, feedback, training and education, infrastructure, and culture. Within the monitoring domain, hospitals can use automated hand hygiene monitoring system to help them more easily obtain the robust number of hand hygiene observations that LEAPFROG is expecting on a monthly basis. Next. The quote in blue is from LEAPFROG. What I want you to consider is what they said, that facilities that have adopted electronic compliance monitoring systems are better able to determine their actual hand hygiene compliance rate, creating the opportunity for more robust quality improvement measures. Again, driving it back to quality. Next. LEAPFROG is encouraging hospitals to take a multimodal approach with regard to monitoring hospitals to achieve the standards with direct observation. LEAPFROG is communicating a strong preference for electronic monitoring. In addition to literature suggesting that automated hand hygiene monitoring works better to pinpoint compliance issues, sheer number of hand hygiene opportunities covered by both strategies, direct as well as automated hand hygiene monitoring, represent powerful evidence in favor of electronic monitoring. Based on the evidence, the LEAPFROG standard calls for monitoring 200 hand hygiene opportunities per month, which is a small subset of overall hand hygiene opportunities. Next, the LEAPFROG organization is encouraging hospitals to the question is the LEAPFROG organization encouraging hospitals to implement electronic compliance monitoring? They know that these systems can be costly and the technology still needs to advance. The question in the new hand hygiene standard asks about a variety of standards that can be used to monitor and improve hand hygiene. LEAPFROG is encouraging hospitals to take a multimodal approach with regards to hand hygiene. All right, next. This slide also shows you what we already know. Sustaining improvement in regards to hand hygiene is hard. It is one thing to make an improvement, but sustaining it can be very difficult. There is no magic bullet in reference to hand hygiene. Automated hand hygiene monitoring is a tool to help you look at the status of your hand hygiene and work towards making improvement, because the data are available to you to make decisions and see how those decisions impact what is done. Next. Again, this slide emphasizes that multiple strategies are often needed to move the dial. This study was done in a relatively small hospital, a 93-bed hospital that used automated hand hygiene system. And this hospital brought in a frontline ownership expert who helped each of the units design their own unit-based program and used the concept of positive deviance to drive improvement. Healthcare workers needed to decide how the work should be done, and they promoted discovery among their peers. Leadership and managers also supported this hospital. The leadership used the CATA performance improvement methodology, which we know a CATA involves changing behavior using a step-by-step process with experimentation by frontline healthcare workers, planning, doing, checking, acting to achieve desired outcomes. At this point, I would like to turn the presentation over to Sandra. Thank you.
Thanks, Pam. So with all of that great data and all those resources that are related to hand hygiene and the importance and the impact that compliance can have in healthcare, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about RTLS-enabled hand hygiene. as I said, we as a RTLS company really do see the value that automation brings to our customers on a daily basis. In talking with infection preventionists, what we've heard, and I think Pam covered a lot of this in the presentation that she gave, that there are 3 key pain points for the infection prevention team. One around data collection. Lots of manual systems and processes still exist in healthcare facilities, so there's a lot of paper forms, sample sizes are difficult to manage, and the practices can be inconsistent, not just between floors, but also between other facilities, other sites that are part of the same facility and/or clinics. They've told us about analytics. Getting the data, once they have it, is only one part of the process. The next step is having to analyze all that data. And if it's in a manual format and there's manual input that needs to happen, it's time consuming and it can be prone to errors as well. And then the last part is just about managing the whole compliance and monitoring process, onboarding the people that need to do the observing, and ensuring that there's a consistency in how each facility and each floor is approaching the compliance issues that are in front of them. So Sonitor has developed a technology, Sonitor Sense. They're hand hygiene modules that can really help automate and provide a level of consistency, accuracy, and reliability around the whole hand hygiene process. I'll talk a little bit about the technology, but the 3 key components and attributes associated with our technology are around accuracy and reliability, ease of installation, and the ability to capture that real-time data. So Pam talked a lot about part of the challenges, limitations, considerations, concerns that people have around automation is having confidence that the data that's being provided is accurate. She talked a little bit about data being captured when people walk past a room as opposed to the caregiver actually being inside of the room. So there's an accuracy component that's critically important when you're thinking about automating hand hygiene through RTLS. There's also a portion that's associated with ensuring that the system is easy to maintain and install, and then of course ensuring that there's an easy way for the data that's being captured by the technology to be integrated with the appropriate reporting capabilities and analytics capabilities that the facility might have. So our hand hygiene solution works in partnership with and seamlessly with our Sonitor Sense RTLS that's based on ultrasound. That ultrasound technology is what allows us to deliver the highest level of accuracy for RTLS, whether that's at a unit level, a room level, a bay level, bed level, or chair level. Technology, as I said, is based on ultrasound. Ultrasound is sent to a tag. The tag receives that ultrasound signal and then communicates its position over the Wi-Fi. Ultrasound has a lot of properties that are associated with it that allow it to be an accurate system. One of the key attributes of ultrasound is that it's contained by walls and windows so that there is no opportunity for the signal to leak or bounce outside of to leak through a wall or a floor or to bounce outside of a room. And again, as you start to think about the accuracy required to capture hand hygiene events, you really want to make sure that you're capturing the event occurring inside of the patient room as opposed to an event being captured as a caregiver walks past a patient room. And that level of accuracy is something that has been proven over and over when it comes to an ultrasound installation. There's no interference risks with ultrasound, so it's not affected by lighting or shiny floors. and it doesn't interfere with any other electronic equipment, and also does not require line of sight. So if I turn my back in a room, you can still hear me talk, but if I shine a light in a corner, that light is only going to be seen in the corner. It won't be seen by things behind it. And then lastly, our technology is scalable and extendable to a variety of use cases. And of course, the one that we're talking about today is hand hygiene. One of the key important features of a hand hygiene solution is accuracy. And I just wanted to share that there are other technologies out there that that are available for hand hygiene. Some of them are based on BLE technology, and it's really important to understand what some of the limitations that are associated with the BLE technology might impose on a use case such as hand hygiene, and also one that requires room level accuracy and confidence. So BLE is a communication tool and is designed to go through walls and floors. As such, that signal, if it's a BLE-based signal, might be captured, instead of being captured in the room in which the BLE tag is, it might be captured in the room next door, in the floor above, or the floor below. Again, because it's designed to go through walls, floors, and ceilings. So depending on the use case that you have, and we can talk about things like staff safety and or hand hygiene, the technology that you choose and the accuracy level that's required for that use case is critically important. Just a graphic to show that the ultrasound signal stays in the room and does not leave the room regardless, until such time, I should say, that the staff member walks out of the room. So how does our hand hygiene solution work? In partnership with GOJO, we've designed a hand hygiene module that you see here in the middle. It's based on LF, low frequency, and it's plug and play. It plugs directly into the dispenser that GOJO has designed, and that module captures a number of events and provides a number of features that are important. One, it captures the caregiver that walks into the field. If a caregiver is wearing a Sonitor badge and walks into the LF field, they are positioned in that field. Two, it captures the dispense event. So not just that the caregiver has walked into the field, but it also captures the action of the gel being dispensed from the liquid being dispensed from the dispenser. And then thirdly, because we plug right into the GOJO dispenser, we are also monitoring the battery power and the battery life of the dispenser. So we can report that through our Sonitor Sense engine in the background. So how does it work? GOJO dispensers are placed inside and outside of a patient room, and they're equipped with a Sonitor hand hygiene module. That module has a unique location that's assigned to it and is defined as that dispenser. Each staff member is assigned an LF-enabled Sonitor Smart Badge. You can see it being worn by the caregiver here. If the staff enters a dispenser with an LF field outside of the room, that location is captured. When the staff enters the patient room, because the patient room is equipped with Sonitor Sense, the room location is captured. And then when the staff enters the LF field for the dispenser in the room, it will capture that event as well. So location and then the dispense event simultaneously. So long as the caregiver is in the room, her location or his location remains in the room. Once the staff member leaves the room, their location is updated to reflect that they've moved out into the hallway. So there are a number of things that are being captured here. Staff member presence in the hallway before they enter the room, staff member at the dispenser and a dispense event, staff member entering the room, staff member at the dispenser in room and the dispense event, and then the staff member exiting the room. So lots of opportunity to capture all of the critical pieces of information required to ensure hand hygiene compliance. And so this is just a pictorial, a little bit of the same thing, right? So we're tracking or monitoring badge movement. We're monitoring dispenser activity and activation. And we're also monitoring staff interaction, if you will, with the dispenser in every location that they are. That data then gets sent through our engine to many of our partners, including GOJO, that can then generate the compliance reports. So to go back to some of the points that Pamela made during her discussion around some of the requirements around accuracy and confidence and ensuring that the right activities are being captured. So through a Sonitor Sense deployment with hand hygiene enablement, you'll be able to capture the dispenser statistics, all of the dispense activities that are associated with the individuals, the dispensing activity and the staff movement combined, and then be able to generate the real-time reports so that that information can be shared at all of the appropriate levels, whether it's being used to report back into LEAPFROG or whether it's being used to help train and ensure that staff are aware of improvements or opportunities for improvements that need to be made. So with that, Pam, I'll hand it back to you.
Sure. Just to emphasize, and I'm so glad you talked about the importance of validation and accuracy. I think rather than spend a lot of time on this slide, let's go to the next, which is our final slide, and open it up for questions as we're almost done with our time.
Great.
Thank
Jen,
you both so much, Sandra and Pamela, for your time today. And thank you for all of this valuable information. As a reminder to the audience, if you do have a question, you can submit using the questions feature on the webinar dashboard. We do have some questions that have come in, and we'll try to get through these in our little bit of time remaining. Our first question is, can the solution track compliance by individual, by department, by facility? What are the capabilities?
So yes, the solution can track by individual, department, facility, or unit, and at what level the facility wants to be able to monitor compliance can be defined by the facility. There's some interest in not doing it at the individual level, but really to ensure that it's being used as a training and educational tool. And so many places will do it by unit and see how they're doing compared to other units. And if there are differences, leveraging the units that are doing well to help train those units that maybe need a little more help.
All right, our next question is, how are healthcare facilities using the data from automated solutions?
Pam, you want to take that one?
Sure, absolutely. Healthcare facilities are using it to drive improvement. Most of the time you can drill down and look shift by shift. You can look unit by unit, as Sandra said. So they're looking at it in whatever increment they want to, or they need to. And the beauty of automated hand hygiene monitoring systems is that if you make an improvement and the improvement works, you will be able to see it in the data in near real time.
Great, thank you. Sandra, before I ask the next question, could you move forward to your contact us slide? Just so that we have that information. Yep. Perfect. So that the audience can see how to get in touch with you both, just in case. All right, our next question is, what benefit does RTLS-enabled hand hygiene bring that direct observation does not?
Well, Pamela, maybe I can start and then you can also add. So truly the value of RTLS enablement is that it eliminates a lot of the manual components that are associated with hand hygiene monitoring and compliance. There is some published data around the Hawthorne effect of direct observation, right? So people tend to do better when they know they're being watched, but then go back to old habits when they know that they are no longer being watched. So the RTLS enablement really takes away that discrepancy, and it gives you a consistent view of compliance and of behavior within the healthcare facility. As Pamela said, what it doesn't do, or where direct observation provides significant value, is in watching the process that someone employs when they're doing hand hygiene. And so being able to directly observe how someone is doing and providing feedback if there are corrections that need to occur in their technique, that's something RTLS enabled hand hygiene doesn't do, right? Because we don't have the eyes, we're just providing the automation to ensure that we're capturing all the events so that we can provide more consistent and reliable reports. Direct observation really gives you the opportunity to train and educate on technique and process.
Exactly. I couldn't have said that better. The only thing I would add is the sheer number. It's the magnitude. I do believe that people are shocked at how much or how many opportunities to perform hand hygiene exists. And this allows you to see that, so you don't get that with direct observation. Is there another question?
We are out of time, but thank you, Sandra and Pamela, both of you, for your time today and for a great presentation. I'd like to encourage everyone to visit today's sponsor to learn more about the services they provide to our industry. Please visit sonitor.com. A quick reminder to our audience that you can obtain your CE certificate by completing today's post-webinar survey. The survey will be emailed to you 1 hour after the end of today's webinar. You must complete the survey to receive your 1 continuing education credit from the ACI. You'll be able to download your certificate as soon as the survey is submitted. If you have any questions, you can reach us at webinar@mdpublishing.com. We'll be back next week with another webinar. Please visit webinarwednesday.live for more details and for complimentary registration. Thank you all and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.